everyone. Welcome to another release party. And Coder Nerd, you're correct. It's the last release party of the year. It's officially that time of the year. We'll be going on our holiday break the next couple weeks, so we won't be doing live streams. And we had the last release for VS Code this year. I'm super excited. I love the holiday times. I've got my little holiday sweater, little Rudolph. You can't fully see it, but that's okay. I am wearing it. I got my holiday decorations, holiday spirit. Very excited to be here with you all. I'm very excited to have some of the engineers on today to talk about what they worked on. I see we already have a lot of hype in the chat. Hello, IDK, how to game. Coder Nerd, floating editor windows is true holiday magic. I could not agree more. I'm very excited for Ben to show that off today. I see we have a lot more happy holidays. Happy holidays to everyone, to you and yours. I see there's already a lot of love for the various features we'll be showing today. Lots of hellos. Hello, everyone. Hello, Ahmad. Drop where you're watching from in the chat. I always love to see that and just see like truly how global our audience is. I think today's going to be a really fun one. We have a couple of great guests today, really awesome features. And like I said, this is the last release party of the year. So it's always a fun one then that we can kind of go out on this note. Just kind of on that topic, December is the housekeeping month for the VS Code team. So that's kind of when the team goes through and goes through some of the issues, the backlog, kind of make sure that, closes out some things, gets that all set up. So in the new year, they can start fresh, really hit the ground running. So because of that, there is not a release in December. So we will not have a release party in January, but we will be back in February with the release party for the January release. So just a little heads up there. Okay, so I see, hey Doug, how you doing? Always love seeing you here. Okay, so I see we have people coming from everywhere. I always love seeing that. In case you are new to these release parties, the whole point of them is basically to have the VS Code team members come on and demo their work that they did in the most recent release. So it's a really great chance to hear from the engineers themselves and ask them questions. So definitely make sure, I see we're already going on in the chat, keep that energy going throughout this so that you can ask everyone your questions. And as is tradition, we also always start off these release parties with a thank you to our contributors. All right, so this is the section at the bottom of every single release notes. We always have a thank you section because VS Code is open source, and we really couldn't do this without you all. So I just take a second to kind of scroll through these to thank all the different contributors we have. As always, the list is pretty long, so I can't just kind of call everyone out one by one, so we'll be sitting here for a while. So I just do a quick scroll through. If you're watching and your name's on this, thank you so much for contributing. If you're watching and you want your name to be on this list, we have a great contributing guide in the VS Code repo so that you can start contributing to our open source project. All right, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the show and kick it off with our first guest, Ben.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Ben, welcome back.
Yeah, it was a busy month from the last release party to now. I'm so excited to share what we've been already shipping actually in Insider, so people were able to try it out. But now we've released floating editor windows in stable VS Code, which is actually nice to do it before holiday break. So actually people can use this until we release our next version. So that was very cool. So I can give a tour and then talk about a little bit of the technical implementation details also.
Yeah, let's do it. I know people have already been very excited about this in the chat and just in general, like on Twitter and everything. We've got a lot of excitement about this feature.
To be fair, the feature request was filed 2016. I think that is like maybe 1 year in after our first release on GitHub. It's our most upvoted issue. And yeah, it's been 7 years. Sorry it took us so long, but we really wanted to get it right. So I'm here on a sample workspace that I've been working on actually, and the easiest way to get into this multi-window thing is that you literally just like take an editor tab and drag it out, and then if you drop it on some empty space on your desktop or on anywhere outside of the window, you essentially get like a second window. That's one way of doing it. We also have like a context menu on the editor tab, so where you can also assign key bindings if you don't want to use the mouse for moving or copying the editor into a new window. And what's interesting is, so if I actually select the copy one, so first of all, you see there's no limit in how many windows I can open. So literally as many as the operating system is able to show you and your screen. But what's interesting is, like, for example, with this copy thing, these two editors here are literally the same, right? So let me just like close the sidebar. So if I have them both side by side and I don't know, I edit, you will actually notice that all of the windows will update immediately. So implementation-wise, what this means is that these floating editor windows are actually pretty much living in the same process space as the main window. So they are very lightweight. They don't consume a lot of memory or like process time. Think about them literally like another editor group that you can just freely arrange, right? So they are really behaving in the same way as the editor as the editor area that you're used to. So, for example, you can split editors. You see tabs here. You get all the editor actions. So it's like a natural extension of what we actually already had just now on this floating window. What's also interesting is that if you want to actually see what's going on, so we have this open editors view here, which I think is not enabled per default, but I have enabled it now just to make it a little bit more obvious how this behaves. So you will see that these windows are actually editor groups here. So you can get a nice overview. You can click through all the editors from here. And you can manage the editors here actually as if they were all in the same window. So in that regard, these floating windows are not so special. One thing which we have decided on for the first version is to only allow editors in here. So you will already notice that there is no Explorer on these windows. There's also no panel. So for example, if you go and bring up the panel area, they are not available in these floating windows. So in our first iteration, we really focused on editors. And in that regard, these windows are super lightweight, right? So they have the title and the status bar and the editor, but nothing else. Nevertheless, something which is maybe less known, some of the things which are currently in the panel can also be made editors, right? So if you actually want to have a terminal outside in a separate window, and maybe I should leave this a little bit open. So there is a command to create a new terminal. Let me just make this window larger that you can see. There's a command to create a new terminal in the editor area. And that's not a new feature. We always had it. But what this allows you to do is you can actually now drag like a terminal out, and you're getting pretty far, right? So you could argue, okay, this is like a panel outside the normal window. So even though it's an editor, it behaves exactly like the terminal would. It's a fully fledged integrated terminal.
That's awesome. So we had John M actually ask, does floating window have its own terminal? So it sounds like, you know, not by default when you just pop an editor out, but you can basically make the terminal an editor that you can then pop out.
And I'm thinking about, like, it would be easily possible to say, if you have a terminal here, why can you not drag it out, right? So actually, it turns out you can drag it out, but nice. we haven't really integrated it everywhere. So one thing that we now realize with this floating editor window feature is we can actually surface this in a lot more areas, right? So for example, in the terminal, you have it. We also have something called a search editor. So let me demo that. So every time you run a search, you're actually able to get the search results into an editor. And then, I mean, you can just drag it out. So you get like a search view in a way, which looks a little bit different than the search view, but it is capable of full text search. You get that in a floating window as well, right? And so you can already think about us looking at other things like debug console, which there's no reason why this couldn't be in a floating window, right? So we will progressively make more things available so that we ensure that this feature is really being used in more contexts.
That's awesome. I mean, there's so much love in the chat. Ivan says, I've got this mono repo, popping out these editor reading windows has been amazing. That's exactly what I was looking for. It's simply amazing. Pritesh asked, is the floating window auto-saved when you make your edits?
Yeah, so it's there's really no behavioral difference between having an editor opened in a floating window versus the main window. So like maybe I should actually make an example, right? So you will actually notice that when I type here, so you see the dirty indicator. When you close, oh, that shouldn't have happened. Okay, that looks like, oh, it was open on another window. Yeah, let me just close the last editor. So when you close the last editor, you get a dialog asking to save, and then you can save and it will actually work. So like, think about these floating windows literally as if you had like a grid, like you are used to, right? So this is a grid of 2 editors, but now expanded to more windows. So all of these groups are equal in that they can hold editors and that they can save and show dirty indication. This reminds me, one thing I should shout out is that not all editors can open in floating windows yet. We have one technical challenge with notebooks specifically and custom editors. So for example, the Markdown preview that shows you like an HTML preview of your Markdown document. These editors use a technology which is not yet able to move out to another window, but it's definitely high up, like high on our backlog. So we already started looking into that because we want every editor to be able to open in the floating window. And another feature, while I'm on the Outlook, what's happening next that we still need to do is like when you close VS Code and you open it again, floating windows are currently just basically not restoring. So obviously we want all your state to restore, because if you have like multi-monitor setup that is laid out in a certain way, of course we don't want to lose that. We just didn't have the time to finish that, but I've seen a lot of people asking for it also in issues, and it's coming, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I think that's one of the really cool parts of having you all on these release parties is kind of getting to hear, okay, yeah, this is what we're working on. We hear you. And people get to see that process of what it's like to actually, prioritize these features, see what's in the roadmap. There's a couple other quick questions. Alvin asks, can you set a floating window to always be on top when you automatically pop it out?
It's a good question because I just got like a feature request for this. So currently that's not an option. It's just not exposed. It's technically certainly possible. So this is like a good reminder if you encounter anything while testing these floating windows in your day-to-day work that you would like to see working, like this one, go to our repository and file an issue. Chances are high that you're actually ending up with me commenting on the issue. And then we can take it from there. So make sure to file issues. You might get closed as a duplicate. We already have quite some issues, so it might be that I just close you as a duplicate of another issue, but then make sure to upvote it, because then you can send out a clear message that you want this kind of feature. So it's, yeah, long story short, it's currently not possible, but there's no reason why it wouldn't work. Yeah.
Awesome. And then one question also from Doug. So you were kind of showing where you can have the same editor open side by side and edit it, and they both update. He's wondering, like, what is a scenario where you actually would want to do that?
I think, like, first of all, we have always allowed to open the same editor multiple times in multiple editor groups. And what I really enjoy is when I have a large file where I, for example, here where I have to scroll. So let me just also open this file here. So let me just like make it. So for example, here, maybe I'm looking at the lower part here for some implementation, and then on the upper part here. So with this, actually, you can think about a side-by-side view of the same file in different parts. And or even if you want to look at some reference down here, there might be some behavior, and up here is like a property you want to look at. So I often end up looking at the same file just on different viewports. I don't think that I would actually look at the same lines left and right. That doesn't make a lot of sense in my day-to-day work, but like with like more lines than the viewport can show, I definitely see myself like having this kind of setup where I just look at different parts of the same file. Yeah. So that
Totally
would
makes
be
sense.
like a use case. Yeah.
Thank you. I know you have one other thing that you want to show. So there's one question.
Yep.
Okay. David asked, just real quick before that, can you unfloat these windows back to the main tabs?
Yeah. So this is a good reminder. So let me just prepare something here. The default behavior when you close a floating window will actually be that the editor moves back into the main window. So for example, I just did this, but if I do it again, the document.txt file is open. I close it and then it moves back. So basically, closing a window means all of the editors will move back to the main window. But if you close like a single editor, so if I go back to a floating window, if you close this editor here, the window will actually close, but then the editor doesn't move back. And this is currently standard behavior. It's not configurable. I've heard people that would like to be able to configure this. But yeah, this is the standard behavior. There's also a command that we offer to say, bring all windows back to the main window. So you can actually have also a key binding for that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Coder Nerd said they thought of everything.
Like one thing, so I have two more things I will wrap up then. You might have seen this log icon here, and I just want to point that out because this is actually not a new feature, but something we always had. So in floating windows, we show this a little bit more prominently. And what it means is that this group is now locked for refusing to open more editors. So what this means is that if now you go and open another editor, we will actually not open it in this group, but we will open it in another group. And the idea behind this is like, think about, you might have a terminal open and there's a process running that constantly spits out output. At no time you want that terminal to be replaced by an editor. So this is what group locking is for. So when you see this icon, try it out. It has been there for a long time, but now it's a little bit more exposed because of floating windows, because we felt this is actually quite useful for floating windows. And in the future, for example, when we support custom editors, think about a browser preview. So think about an editor that shows you the result of your website. You always want to see that. You never want that to be replaced with something else. And then, yeah, locking is really the way to go. So that's that. And then jumping to the last part of my demo, because I just showed VS Code on the desktop, but we also have VS Code in the web. And if you're on a GitHub repository and you just press dot, I think by now a lot of people probably already know this, but this is really cool. It will actually open the repository inside VS Code in your browser, looking pretty much the same as I was just showing. This is also actually the same repository. And what I want to demo is that the feature works in the web as well. So there's the same support for multi-window works in our web version of VS Code and Codespaces and GitHub Dev and VS Code Dev. Feature parity, really the same in web as it does on desktop. And that's really thanks to the APIs we are using. They're all browser APIs. So we are really building on top a very cool framework here that makes us do this in web and Electron or desktop. So yeah, that's
just
awesome. Wrapping up my demo with this highlight.
Yeah. I love that you also like got the, when you go to the repo and hit the dot key, because people who know it, like, that's great. But then people who don't know it are always like, what? I didn't know you could do that. Their mind gets blown. So it's so cool that you can just hit that and open it. I love showing people that. Yeah, I love just like all, like you were saying, right? Like this is from 2016, but y'all really wanted to make sure that we got it right when we put it out there. You know, there's been a ton of comments being like, yeah, you did. Like you got it right. So I love just kind of seeing all the intentionality that went into designing this. And then, you know, as you've just shown, that it also is in VS Code for the web to kind of show, okay, however you're using VS Code, it's there. So I love that Coder Nerd said it works on the web version as well. Mind blown. Eric asked one question: does Command Shift T reopen the closed tab in a floating window?
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, if you're asking for whether that reopens the floating window, unfortunately, I have to say no. So that's a very good feature request. Make sure to file it. But if it's an editor, if you're on a floating window and you close that editor and you reopen it, then yes, that works. So I think follow up with me on GitHub if it doesn't work the way you expected.
Awesome. Cool. And just, to remind everyone, that would be on just the regular VS Code repo, right?
Yep.
To file that issue.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. All right, Ben. Well, this was awesome. Everyone loves this feature. I think everyone's so excited to even see it get even better. Do you have any final thoughts to add or just things you want to talk about?
No, that was all. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much, Ben. I'm sure we'll have you on in the future again.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right. So that's going to bring us to our next demo with Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hey,
How are you
Olivia.
doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Good. Always good having you on these. And I see you also have dressed for the occasion.
Yes.
I love this sweater.
Sweater. I don't get to wear it that many times a year, so I got to take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I literally don't look at my holiday sweater literally all year. And then December, it's like, you know what? I'm kind of cold every single day. Let's just put it on.
Exactly. People look at me weird when I try to wear it in July. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do
you know what month it is? Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, as always, we're very excited to have you on. What will you be showing us today?
Yeah. So I'm here to talk about improvements in Copilot chat again.
Awesome. I love that. I know we actually had a couple of random questions about Copilot in the chat throughout this. So yeah, if y'all have any Copilot questions, now is definitely the time to ask. And Rob will show off the latest improvements.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with talking about our inline chat experience. And so if you haven't seen this before, just a quick recap. I can be in an editor and I can hit the key binding on Mac. This is Command I. And it brings up this widget where I can talk with Copilot chat and I can ask it, this is the experience I want to use when I want to generate code from scratch or I want to edit code or things like that. So a really basic example, I can say 1 to 10. All right, so I write some prompt and then I get to watch it type that code into my editor for me. And it can also edit code and things like that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, we can do quite a lot with this. And so one thing we can do is that I can have an error in my code. And let's see if I can get everything on screen at the same time here. I have this function that I'm calling with a user object and the interface looks like this, but I'm getting an error here. And so sometimes these TypeScript errors are a little bit hard to read, but now I can have Copilot look at this for me. If I hover this and I can say quick fix, I can either have Copilot try to fix it for me and generate code or just explain what the problem is. And so let's say I want to fix it. So I'm going to click this. And we're basically just giving the whole error message to Copilot and along with some context about the code. And it's going to try to figure out what to do about it. And so you can see it made some changes for me and the things that I want to call out here that are new. So we have the /fix command. This we've had before, but what's new this month is that now in addition to writing the code and making the red squiggles go away, it has also just given me a little explanation in line of what the problem was and then what it actually changed. Right. And so now this helps me a little bit because instead of just knowing, okay, there were some changes and the error went away and that's good, I can hopefully learn a little bit too and see that, okay, the problem was that this object did not actually match this interface. And so it renamed these properties for me. And you can see it renamed the properties. It also added the interface type annotation to this variable, which, is probably just best practice for writing code like this.
That's awesome. And, I feel like Copilot is great for literally any level of programming that you're at. So if you're an experienced developer, it can really help your productivity. But this is also a great example of if you're just getting started and you maybe don't fully understand TypeScript, for example, you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, why did this not work? I love that we now have kind of that sentence okay, yeah, this is the problem. We can fix it by this. So you kind of get that understanding of, okay, this is what's happening. This is how I'd fix it. And so you kind of know then next time what to look for.
Exactly.
That's really great.
Yeah, I really like it.
Cool. I know you're kind of showing like this fix with the red squiggly underline. Are there, and with TypeScript, does fix work with other types of problems too?
Yeah, so there's something really interesting, and it's since Copilot it sort of has the ability to really kind of read your code and understand it on a deeper level sometimes. I found that if I can throw /fix at other problems that weren't even picked up by TypeScript, and Copilot might be able to tell me sort of what I did wrong. And so let's say I have some code like this. So I'm calling create user, it takes 2 strings and an age, and then it returns something which is an iUser. And, so I wrote this code, and maybe you already noticed what the problem is. It's kind of straightforward, but, if I ran this code and something wasn't working, I can actually, look at this and say /fix and see if Copilot chat can help me out.
Yeah, I love using it for this, where it's kind of like you're getting the output from your thing and you're maybe not getting what was expected, and you're kind of like, because I don't know if other people are like this, but like when you like literally like are looking at your code over and over again, it can be so hard to just like look at something and be like, what the heck is the problem here? And like I feel like this is a great example. You can see Copilot came back with this. Yeah,
Exactly.
so yeah, Rob, I'll let you take over.
Yeah, no, we noticed. I mean, this is tough. A tough thing with TypeScript, right? I'm taking a couple strings, but they're different types of strings. But or Copilot Chat was able to see, okay, this is the name, this is the email address. You put them in the wrong order, and even though TypeScript can't tell the difference between 2 strings, Copilot Chat can sort of understand the meaning, and so that's something cool that you can do too.
Yeah, I always like that, because I mean, we kind of position Copilot as your AI pair programmer. So like when you think of, a traditional pair programmer, if you just like had someone else in the room with you, they'd probably be able to see that really quickly because they haven't been staring at this code all day. So it's kind of like having that built in there. So I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's nice to have someone watching over your shoulder who can kind of understand things. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
I
so
love that.
I wanted to call out a couple other things that we've changed with the inline chat. And let me just go back a couple steps, and I'll bring back what we were looking at a second ago.
And while this is kind of thinking, someone actually has a question about Code Insiders, and if it's recommended to download, to basically use Insiders version.
Yeah, so our VS Code Insiders version, the green icon, it's updated every single day with the latest changes from what we're checking in. And then the blue icon, the stable version of VS Code, that's updated once a month. If you want to see like the absolute latest and greatest changes, and get a kind of sneak preview of what we're working on this month, then I definitely recommend checking out the Insiders version. It can be a lot of fun, and it also, if you use it, it helps us test, and if you find issues, you can tell us about it, and we find that really, really helpful. The blue icon, sometimes is going to be more stable because we do a whole lot of work to make sure it's in very, very, very good shape before it goes out the door. But yeah, it kind of depends on what your priorities are, I guess. I always say I'd love it when people use the Insiders version, so that's what I would vote for.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Sorry, didn't mean to sidetrack.
No, it's all right. Yeah. So I also wanted to call out, so if you have been here before, or if you've been using Copilot Chat, you might realize that this looks a little bit different than it used to. And so what I'm showing here also is a sort of experimental new option we have for the inline chat widget called Live 3 mode. And I've set this in my setting, inline chat.mode Live 3. This is in our release notes too, if you want to check that later. But instead of showing you the kind of inline diff that you might remember, previously we were showing a split view with the previous code on the left and the new code on the right. Now we are sort of simplifying it and making it a little more lightweight. And so you just see the new code kind of directly in your editor. If you do want a diff, you can bring it back actually by clicking this button. And then we're going to show you, so here's what was there previously, and here's what was there now. This is still kind of a diff view, and you can see, hopefully you can see in this theme that we've highlighted like the parts of the line that actually changed, right? So you can see the property name changed, but the values didn't change. So you still kind of get that like extra prompt of, here's part of the line that changed, and hopefully that combined with the explanation helps too. But I personally, I just find this nice and a little more readable.
A little more streamlined. Is that so? I know you showed the setting to get that enabled, and again, that's also going to be in our release notes. Is this something that might end up being the default view in the future, or will it kind of stay as a setting that's configurable?
I think we're evaluating it, and we might head toward this being the default. I'm not sure.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, try it out. Let us know what y'all think. If you have a preference for the previous view or this new one that you can configure in the settings.
Yeah. And something else I'd like to call out is that we also have input history working in the inline chat widget, and it also works across sessions. So if I can use the arrow keys and go up and down and see, the previous commands that I typed in and get them back easier. And if I reload the window, that's going to stick around. And so here I'm just using the up and down arrow keys. And if I want to move the cursor out of the inline widget and back into the editor, then I can use command up and down for that. So here I'm holding command and doing command up and down, so I can kind of
cool.
get back to the editor really easily and get back into my chat widget and all that.
Oh, nice. Man, I read the release notes and I do all this, and I still like miss out on these things. This is so cool to see.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. We already have, and a lot of people are saying that these features are awesome, really good stuff. I don't know if you're going to address this later in your demo or if you want to now, but we did have a quick question just about Copilot chat and the context that it understands. And Jay Raphael says, when will chat understand the context of all project files? So if you just want either now or later in the demo address that, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't have anything coming up that specifically gets to that. So let me just do a really quick demo of some of the stuff we've been working on for asking questions about bringing context from your workspace. And let's see. Yeah, so what I'll do briefly is just, I'm going to open the VS Code workspace, just because this is it's a complicated workspace with a whole lot of files, and this is what I, kind of work in every day. And, let's say I have a scenario where I'm like a new developer, or maybe I'm in a open source contributor who wants to contribute to VS Code. I open this folder, there's a whole lot of files here. I'm not really sure where I want to get started. But I can go to the chat panel and I can say at workspace, and I can ask a question like, where is the code for the floating editor window? And what we're going to do is we're going to search your workspace and try to find files that seem like they might be relevant to this query. And we're able to do a search using sort of synonyms and related phrases to these words. And we're going to look for all these pieces of context, and we're going to sort of summarize them and chew them up and include them as context with the prompt that we send up to the Copilot chat LLM. And that's what it's doing right now. It sometimes takes a minute, depending on how large your workspace is or what the prompt was.
Does it kind of cache that workspace info, though, once you've done one workspace question? So like this is kind of your first time being at workspace asking a question. If you do at workspace, then another question next, will it be a little quicker because it?
Not necessarily, because we still sort of have to, for a different query, we still kind of have to start fresh. And we're not like building a local index, because we don't want to use a bunch of memory or disk space or something like that. Some repositories, like if you have a GitHub repository open, some repositories might be indexed by GitHub. And in that case, then we might be able to call out to a GitHub service and do a search that way, which will be a little bit faster. But for other workspaces, we'll just be searching.
And I mean, realistically, the VS Code project, if y'all haven't ever looked at it, is a big project. So I mean, realistically, this took under a minute still to go through this and parse it. Yeah,
I wasn't. I don't know if this found exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't sure whether I'm using a good term here or whether it would find the thing that Ben was just demoing. What it found is code related to opening editors and managing editor groups. And the thing is about at workspace, even when it doesn't find exactly what I'm looking for, it typically still gives me like a really good starting point, right? And so if I start with code in this directory and these files, and these are links, I can click these files and open them. And this is a great place to start looking for the code I'm looking for, and I can see how editor groups are managed, and from there I can probably figure out, there's probably a flag in here that tells us to open a new window or something like that.
Right. That's awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for kind of taking the time to answer that. I know it wasn't in your set demo, but questions about context is always a very relevant one, and the at workspace is relatively new, so I think it's always good anytime we can.
Exactly. Yeah. I thanks for giving me an excuse to talk about it. Honestly, I think it's something people are really interested in. So.
Yeah, great question, Raphael.
So I also wanted to talk about some improvements we've made to working with the terminal with Copilot Chat. And what I can do, so you just saw the workspace, we call this the chat agent, which is like an expert that knows about something that I can talk to in chat. We also have an at terminal chat agent. And so I can open the terminal now, and we have a key binding to bring this up really quickly. I'm going to hit Command-I just in the terminal. And so now we've made it around to our third Copilot Chat surface, which is Quick Chat, which is just a really nice thing for kind of quick questions where I want to pull up this picker and look at this, and then it's going to go away and take up a little less space than some of the other things. But at terminal, I can ask it questions just about how to do things in the terminal, and it's able to suggest terminal commands that are kind of specific to my OS and my shell. It's also now, as of this month, it's able to use workspace context. And so doing something similar to what I just showed you, where it searches files and tries to find things that are relevant. So I can ask it a question like this: find all files that deal with the user object, like this thing I was just looking at. And it's going to try to write a command to figure this out for me. So you can see it's going through my workspace files, it's collecting workspace info. And so it gives me this grep command that I can run in the terminal. And the interesting thing here is, I just said user object. And since it is using my workspace context, it's able to figure out, oh, he's talking about the iUser interface. And so we're going to look for files that have iUser in them.
That's awesome. So you don't just get kind of generic, if I just went to Google or something and was find a user, they wouldn't obviously know, okay, what does that mean in the context of your thing? That's awesome.
Exactly. I can click this button and just insert it into my terminal. You should always proofread terminal commands that the robot writes for you, but then you can just hit enter, and it's going to list those files out for me, which is exactly what I was looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great plug to always just double check what you're about to run in the terminal.
Yeah, important.
Copilot. Yeah, you're still in charge.
And then
that's cool. Sorry, go ahead.
I can also ask things that are more generic. So I can say, how to list Git commits, and Git commands I can never quite remember. And at that time, it didn't use any workspace context. It just said, okay, this seems like a generic question. So it gives me Git log, which is also what I was looking for, and then I can do this.
That's cool. So it can kind of register when, okay, this is a general question. I don't need to go through and read through the file base and everything. That's awesome.
Exactly.
So you're kind of showing this for getting suggestions about commands to run. Is there anything that at terminal agent can do other than that?
Yeah, so we have a few other things that light up in the terminal. And one thing it can do is if I use a command incorrectly, let's say someone told me that I can use npm run start to run my project. And so I'm trying to run that in this workspace. I run that and I get this big confusing error. And I'm not really sure what the problem is, but we noticed that this command failed. And so we show this little sparkle button here. I can click this, I get another quick fix that says explain using Copilot. And so at terminal can also try to explain what happened here.
Oh, nice.
And it's saying, it happens because there was no package.json in this folder. We need this in order to have an npm project. And then it tells me I can run npm init and what I need to do to get myself out of this. And so that's a much more helpful answer than this nonsense.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show how you can literally basically never leave your editor when you have these questions, because historically what you would do, or at least what I would do, is I'd then copy that error and then go into my internet search and then be like, what does this mean? And then read through Stack Overflow to figure out what to do. And then now it's you can do all that here with the context of your code. So you're probably going to get an answer way quicker than that more traditional route. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. There is one question that Pritesh asked. So they're currently using Copilot Chat and then also the GitHub Copilot CLI. are those just separate tools right now that don't kind of integrate and mingle?
Yeah, these are independent.
Okay.
So our Copilot chat integration in VS Code can sort of be used, regardless of whether you're using that CLI, and it sort of does its own thing.
Cool. Okay, good to know, because I know we kind of get those questions relatively frequently. So yeah, just kind of separate tools, each have their own use cases.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. And David said that he loves the sparkles. And yeah, was cutting and pasting error messages before. So now it's just click, fix this for me, or tell me how to fix this.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Do you have
So
anything else to show? Yeah.
yeah, one more thing I want to show, or two if we have time, whatever.
Yep.
So something that we're working on is, when, like I just was saying, when Copilot generates some code, it's a good idea to proofread it. And we're trying to be a little more proactive about finding possible issues with that code, and then warning them, for you. And so let me give an example. And so this is kind of an experimental feature. You won't see this lighting up yet. We're going to be sort of gradually enabling it for more and more users. And you all may see this start to show up at some point in the next month. But essentially, we're trying to detect possible vulnerabilities in code that's generated in the sidebar chat. And then, oh no.
The demo gods finally showed up.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
What is going on? Let me try one more time. Let me close this. Make sure it's a little. Okay, there we go. So what we're trying to do is, when you get a suggestion with a code block in Copilot chat in the sidebar, then we are running this through a model that's able to detect possible vulnerabilities in the code that's generated, and then we're going to flag those vulnerabilities for you. So here I asked it, okay, show me how to hash a password with MD5. This is a bad idea. This is not an algorithm that is secure enough to use to protect passwords. And it told you that. It said, you probably shouldn't be doing that. It can be brute forced, but it wrote the code anyway. So you can, maybe you want an example of insecure code, who knows, but just to make sure that you understand this is a bad idea, we are also flagging this vulnerability at the bottom of the code block and saying, hey,
cool.
that's a bad algorithm. You shouldn't be using that.
That's good. So you kind of have like a couple of okay, in the actual text, it's like, yeah, probably shouldn't do this. And then you also have kind of more that like flag that surfaces. It's like, yeah, here's the specific vulnerability that we probably shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it's good too, to kind of like, have that extra, okay, I should probably think about what I'm doing. Like, yes, Copilot can generate a lot, but like, should you? So that's always good to kind of be remembered.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of different types of vulnerabilities that we're detecting. We'll be able to detect them across different programming languages, and yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Cool. And then I know you had like one optional thing you kind of want to do. We have a couple of like general Copilot questions, so I'll let you decide. We probably about like 5 more minutes in your demo. So would you rather have the general questions or show off your last feature?
The last feature is pretty quick, and
okay.
So why don't I just show
let's
that
try
off?
to do both then. Yeah.
And then I can take questions if I have time for it.
Awesome.
So just one more thing to show. So in the past we've shown that Copilot chat can explain code, and I can select some code, I can right click it, I can go to Copilot and explain, or I can use /explain in either the sidebar chat or the inline chat. And then last month I showed that we were able to sort of use some of the language smarts from VS Code to give Copilot more context about the code it's explaining, right? So it can look at not just the code, but like definitions of those functions, and it can do that for JavaScript. And so now we've made the same improvements for Rust code. And so I grabbed some random Rust code from the VS Code repo. I'm not really a Rust person, but fortunately Copilot chat is there to explain it to me. So I asked it to explain this code, and so like I said, it's looking up extra context using the language smarts from VS Code. And so I can see, if I, oops, can't get it while it's scrolling, but Anyway, it's giving me an explanation that, again, is not just based on like a surface level reading of this code, but is actually based on the definitions of these functions in machine.rs. And so you can see it's actually saying specific things about those functions too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
super
can expand
robust.
this section. I can see that, yes, it did look into these other files and it got that extra context.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned that like this is for Rust. Are there other languages that y'all are looking to kind of add to this? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is lit up at least for TypeScript, JavaScript, for Rust. Off the top of my head, I guess I'm not sure whether it is also lit up for Python and other languages too. I know we're doing a lot of work there, so if it's not there, it will probably be soon.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Awesome. Well, these are so many great features. We have a couple of kind of like general Copilot questions. One saying, can the prompt be adjusted to direct context-based queries to use specific files/lines? So for example, force Copilot to retrieve the entire contents of certain files instead of just letting it kind of auto search for which lines to pick.
Yeah, we do have this. It's not in VS Code stable yet. You can try it out in Insiders, but it still needs a little more polishing. I'd really like to get it out in January. But what you can do is you can come in here and I'm going to hit hash and pick file. And then here I can pick any file in my workspace. And then it's going to include this file with context, or if the file is really big, we might try to summarize it or chunk it in some way. But then I can ask questions about this file and say, what does it do? And Copilot Chat will be able to see that file and answer.
Oh, that's awesome. Another great plug for using Insiders. I think someone actually asked earlier, when we were talking about Insiders, what is Insiders? I think someone posted a link to it. But it's, as Rob was saying, the green icon of VS Code. So just another installation where you can kind of get the newest features there. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Peggy, for putting that up. So yeah, if you're interested in doing it, head to that link. You can go ahead and download it. It's still VS Code, but it's just the Insiders version. So you'll get those fresher releases. Cool. All right. And then I know we're kind of running out of time. So let's take one more question. I think I know there are a lot of questions, so thank you all for doing this. I wish we can get to them all. S asks, what can work offline with GitHub Copilot?
Unfortunately, nothing's going to work offline. It needs to be connected to the GitHub Copilot service. And yeah, without that, it's not going to be able to do anything.
Cool. Great to know. All right, Rob, this was, as always, amazing. I'm always like, literally every single release, I'm like, how is there so much cool new stuff for Copilot Chat? So thank you, as always, for coming on here. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we head to our final demo?
Oh, I don't think so. Just try everything out and file issues if you find them, feature requests, and let us know how it goes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. Happy holidays. Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Olivia.
All right, that's going to bring us to our final guest, Connor. Hello, Connor.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
We got a little holiday sweater action coming from you too, it seems like.
Oh yeah, well, I was told that it was mandatory. So
I mean, yeah. You can't join unless you do it. We would just take you off.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on here. I know we've had you on a few times, even just in the last few months, basically. So it's always a pleasure having you on here. What will you be showing us today?
Yeah. So I'm going to be showing you some improvements that we made to our performance tooling in VS Code for JavaScript. So I have here, if you're got screen, there we go. A little like web app. So what this web app does, it's an Express app. So it's a like yield Node.js server that has a path. So it lets me ask for a color, and then it just basically like returns an image with that color. So I can go ahead and demo that real quick. It's pretty simple. Oops. I need to run my server. There we go. Listening there. If I go to path, if I go to like red, green, blue. So this gives like a nice red image. If I put in a different parameter here, if I ask for like if I ask for like maximum green, then red plus green is yellow.
Nice. Okay. You're testing my like back to elementary school learning combination of colors here.
Yep. Yeah, and so this is cool. So what I've done here is that this I have this like logic that like makes the image, and then I have this cache here. So if I see someone already asked for that image before, then I can send the existing one. And I have some logic here to make sure that I don't use too much memory. I only cache like the last 10 images that I see. But I noticed that this isn't really working. So I actually have a memory endpoint that I've made as well here. So currently this is using, let's say, about 50 megabytes of memory, which is about normal for like a Node.js application.
Okay.
But if I make a lot of requests, so I have a script for that called make lots of requests.
Very aptly named. I love it.
Yes. Then I see that this actually gets like pretty big. So this is actually now about 200 megabytes,
Ooh, yeah.
which it shouldn't be there because I'm only caching the last 10 images, and they aren't that big. So I want to see what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually relaunch this app inside of a debug terminal. So I can use the create JavaScript. There we go. The JavaScript debug terminal command. And what this does, it's something that we've had for a while, is that it's a terminal that any like JavaScript code that I run here will be debugged. So I go ahead and do that, and I'm going to do my script again to actually make lots of requests. And then like with this, I can use our new like tooling to actually see where memory is being used. So there's a few ways to actually get to that. One thing you can do is you can go to the call stack view, and then if you hover over a process here, you'll get a record button that'll let you take a performance profile of that process.
Oh,
apparently that's
okay.
not working right now. Maybe it's something that we messed up on Insiders, but you can also just run the command debug take performance profile. Then you get a few options that you can take. So you can like look at CPU. You can look at how memory is being allocated, or you can take a snapshot of the full like heap of your program, which is what I'm going to do here.
Okay.
So that's just like instant like snapshot here. I choose it, and then it saves the snapshot file inside of my workspace folder here. Then I can open this and then look at this view. So this is kind of the initial table view. So essentially what you see here is that we group all objects in memory by their class name. And then we record like how much memory like that specific thing is used, and then also how much memory that causes to be retained. So the way to think about the retained size is that it is the amount of memory that if this object was like removed from our program, like how much memory would then be freed.
Okay.
So it's the amount of memory that object kind of like uniquely contains.
Okay.
And in these cases, like all of these things are actually like all the retainers of this like JS array buffer data here. So if you expand that, you can see like each individual object like in memory from this array buffer. So we have more than 10 of them, obviously. And you can also click this little graph button and then see the retainers of this object in a kind of visual graph.
Ooh,
so here we see this being retained with a like internal reference from an array buffer, which is in a uint8 array, which is a property of an object, which is inside an array, which is the like element, which is a like element in an array. Because this graph can be pretty big, we don't show the full list of retainers because eventually you get into all the internals. But you can also change this. So I can say if I want like 6 levels of retainers, do that, and you see this is kind of getting into the system context. Which here this is just kind of meaning it's a global or it's the like variables that are like in scope in that script. So that's just saying that this is a variable that's at the top level of the script. Yeah, and you can see it's also referenced by my create image with color function. But anyway, so
that's awesome. So you can kind of configure like how many levels it's showing there. So if you're like, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting enough, you can just change that retainer level, right?
Yeah, and like especially with like Node. Actually, in this case, we have a a pretty contained graph. But if you look at some like other things, it's very easy to get a graph that's like massive and would
I'm
be
sure.
very slow
Yeah.
to draw. So that's kind of our heuristic, where we have a default of 4 levels and you can increase that. Yeah. So anyway, we've identified that the cause of this memory usage is just like keeping those buffers. So something that we're doing in this function is probably wrong. So I can close this here, get my debug explorer out of the way. There we go. Yeah, so something in here is wrong. I'm actually gonna see if I can use Rob's nice little fix Copilot to see if it can tell me what's wrong here.
I love when we get to like see previous demos demoed in the later demos.
Yeah, so I'm curious if it'll work or not. No, that's actually not the right answer.
But hey, we tried it.
Yeah, so the student among you might have noticed that we have this cache, which is an array that we're like finding things in and then adding to. But it looks like we actually are using size, which is not actually a property of an array. So what we want to do is change that out for length here, which is the correct way to read the length of an array in JavaScript. And then I think with this change, we should be not quite so high in our memory usage. So I'm going to restart the server real quick.
So basically, with never triggering that.
Yeah,
condition.
So this was always like undefined, and like undefined is not less, or it's not greater than 10, so it would never actually like remove the first element of the array. Yeah, so let's try that again. Let's make lots of requests, and then I'm checking probably like maybe around 100 megabytes or so of memory. Yeah, so it's still actually getting pretty high there. I'm curious why that is. I wonder if it just hasn't triggered garbage collection yet. That's interesting. Oh, sorry, I should cache shift. Actually made it's like an unintentional bug there apparently.
I love
so let's try that again one more time. Because unshift is putting something at the start of the array. Shift is taking something off the first element of the array.
I always think these are good because it's like, y'all, this is truly live. Like,
yeah,
this is a real demo.
Yeah, so now the memory usage is around 139 megabytes, which I think is probably a lot better. And we can also verify that, so I can take another profile or another snapshot. And then I'm checking to see, oh yeah, this looks much better. So there's only, let's see, around like 4 megabytes, like 3 megabytes used of these buffers. And there's still like several of them, just because there's also internal ones that are not the ones that we have in our program. But it looks like we have 10, yeah, this looks like about 10 buffers that are in the cache as a result of our program. And then they're all the same size because they're all the same size image.
This is awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't really look at the memory of like this stuff really frequently. So do you generally generate these heap snapshots like only if you're kind of seeing that memory is like getting a little bit out of control? Or is this something that you do like pretty much anytime you're writing a JavaScript application? I'm just curious kind of how that works.
Yeah, so like usually it's something that you do if you notice that your memory usage is high. It does take like, especially in the graphs, it does take like a few seconds to actually collect them. So it isn't something that you do like at runtime that often. Though the Chrome team has made improvements recently to make it faster to collect. Yeah, so it is something that you normally do manually. Like one kind of cool thing though is that we actually now in our VS Code tests like did some work to kind of test the give heaps. So like in our tests, we can say that if we like run like this set of tests, like opens editors and stuff, then we can call a function that like asserts in the heap that there is like, for example, like no more editor objects like left in memory. We actually do this. We actually do this because we actually have a library here. I think you call it v8 heap parser. Let's see if I get it right. Yeah, so we actually published a library here that's actually a WebAssembly library that we use internally for both for the graph to like visualize like that graph in the table, but also that we call out to in our code to like do those assertions. So if you have code where you want to do like programmatic kind of accesses or like introspection on your heap, is obviously kind of an advanced use case here. But there's a library for this that you can try out. And the cool thing is this is actually also written in Rust, and we compile it down to WebAssembly. So it goes pretty fast. Yeah.
That's awesome. And this heap visualization, this is out-of-box functionality, right? Like you don't need any sort of extension or anything?
Yep, that's right. So this is like out of the box. The actual graph is actually an extension. So if you hit the graph button and you don't have that extension installed, they'll prompt you to install it. Yep, that's also the same extension that gives you like the film graph if you have a CPU profile or a heap profile.
Okay.
So those are included in that graphing extension.
Awesome. And then we have a general JavaScript memory question. Is JavaScript reference counted or garbage collected, or both?
So I'm not an expert on the internals. I think like most kind of like modern languages, it's like a generational garbage collector. So it is garbage collected, and there's like basically, depending on the lifetime of an object, there's different like areas that it can be allocated in, and then those are collected at different intervals and in different ways. But yeah, that's not really like my wheelhouse.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for answering it though. We had lots of love for this. We had just trying to find the questions. Ahmad said, wow, that's awesome when you're showing the graph visualization. Code and Nerd also said this demo is amazing as well. Great way to close 2023. An obligatory, what is your theme? I think you shared the link with us. So the Codesong theme, I believe.
Yes, I think Codesong it's one that I forked from someone else's theme and made it have better support in VS Code. So you can try it out if you'd like it.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, definitely try it out. I also think it's so cool when like you fork this theme. I always think it's cool when like everyone shows off their own theme. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Is there any Coder Nerd said Connor rocks? Is there anything else that you wanted to show today or talk about that's on the roadmap?
I don't think so. So this is kind of the thing I've been working on for debug recently. I've moved back to the VS Code testing support. So there's lots of really cool things coming down the pipeline there as far as being able to like write and run unit tests in VS Code.
Awesome.
So if you haven't yet, most likely if you are unit testing things, there's probably a good chance that someone's already written an extension for your choice of framework and language. So you can run like unit tests in VS Code pretty easily, and there's cool things coming there soon.
Cool.
I'm trying to show. There we go. We also have there we go. And so we also use this in VS Code itself. So this is the UI, and you can run tests, and if you get errors, apparently I don't think I've not built VS Code yet because I just updated. But anyway, cool things coming soon.
Cool. Awesome. We love hearing that. And yeah, I know you're always busy with a lot of different hats going on. But I'm glad we got to have you spotlight the JavaScript debugger updates. I think that heap visualization with the graph is so cool, and like being able to actually interact with it and see it. I just think that's awesome. Like as someone who doesn't do that very often, like that feels like something that like I can actually like understand what's going on. So that's great. Cool. All right, Connor. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we will have you on plenty of times in 2024 to talk about the great new work you'll be doing. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and happy holidays if you celebrate. And
of course. Thank you. All right, everyone. That brings us to the end of the release party, the end of our last release party of 2023. Like Connor just said, happy holidays to everyone. We're so grateful for all the support you have given us, whether that's from actually contributing to the VS Code repo or just joining these live streams, giving us your questions, letting us know what you like, what you don't like, interacting with us on social media. All of that is so valuable. All of this is stuff that we do for y'all. So I just love getting the chance to actually interact with y'all. So like I mentioned, we on the live stream channel are going on holiday break for the next couple of weeks. So we will not have any live streams for the rest of December, but we will be back. I think January 4th is the first Thursday of the new year. We'll be back with a regularly scheduled live stream. We'll have those all throughout January. And then we'll be back with release parties in February to kick off the first release of 2024. So again, thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure. Take care and happy holidays.